Well, hello and welcome to a discussion of this and that with Dr. Childress. So it's a Saturday, excuse me, and I'm just starting in on my work. I work on Saturdays. Um, and I'll be seeing some clients, first of the month clients later, and I have a couple reports to produce. But before heading into my report, I was um, checking on things and reviewing the current status of where we are uh, generally within changing systems. We're right now, but we're pre uh, election day, and so it's kind of hard for me to organize to a task because I'm waiting for everything to fall out. My equations, my thinking, um, has probabilities that Harris is going to win, but I want to see before we start doing that because the Trump victory would put things on a different path to a degree. The and related to that, I put in the title here. It's about equations. I do sort of have equations for everybody of what's happening, accurate or inaccurate. I don't have all the precise values for some of the terms, so they fluctuate. But I have um ideas about what's happening here. And one of the features about the whole movement and everything, all the equation, all the calculation, all the stuff that's happening right now is the internet. I have the internet. So I've known that. I'm internet psychologist. I built my foundations on the website and then the blog. Then I consolidated those or packaged those up when those had served their function. So I have a Purple Trees website and an old blog from before that was during that period of foundational building. I switched over to Facebook, and so I've been using Facebook a lot now. That's less documented. It is documented, but it flows into the ether of non-visibility, whereas my blogs stay more visible, my websites stay more visible. I came up with a different website as well, a consulting website that's more active and that I'm using to as my active website, archive website for all the documentation, an archive uh, blog for all the documentation. And I have a new blog for new documentation, but I'm not using that very much. I'm using mostly Facebook. But now I finally have gone back to YouTube, which is where I started. If you search around, you'll find my Pasadena YouTube videos from the very beginning. First thing I did was went to YouTube, told you what the pathology is. I'm still saying it's the same thing. Shared delusional disorder, cross-generational coalition and stuff 10 years later. But now we've reached the phase of the calculations of time where I'm now able or I'm now coming out using YouTube more actively. And I'm using it like an intervention. Okay, so this is an intervention. Dr. Childress, as I'm walking to one task, stops in here and talks to you about a certain feature of the pathology. And what that feature is, what's kind of swirling right now, is the legislative line. And Melanie's on that line prominently in New Mexico, but it's moving throughout everything because of Cadence Law. And what Cadence Law is that the domestic violence monkeys, the DV monkeys, got to the legislators around the issue of they hate Dorsey Pruder, so they got to the legislators around the issue of parental alienation and these reunification workshops. Dorsey. But there's also one by Linda Gottlieb. There was one by Rorschach that they hate family bridges, and the forensic psychologist tried one for a while, a 4-day workshop, the overcoming barriers. So interestingly, Cadence Law variants are outlawing something that the forensic psychologists tried. These 4-day reunification workshop things are absolute failure. And Gottlieb's is horrible. seen enough information about that to be very concerned about that. And that's not diagnosis guides treatment. Okay, so there's no treatment for parental alienation. So it's totally vulnerable to authentic challenge that there's no treatment for this. So why are you doing treatments if you don't have a diagnosis of a made up pathology? So it's a factitious disorder imposed on another. Okay, what's the treatment for that? It's a shared delusion. What's the treatment for that? It's a psychological abuse. What's the treatment for that? So those are the questions we should be answering. What is the treatment for child psychological abuse, a parent creating a delusional disorder, factitious disorder? And one of the treatments I will say is the continued visitation, factitious disorder. If you got a factitious, this would be the treatment for that. It's not a 4-day workshop kind of thing, but it's something like Dorsey's will be helpful in a transition because she's doing something different. But I'm not going to fight with you folks about that. You want to outlaw effective treatments like Dorsey, Pyro, that's fine. Outlaw them. You're participating in the child abuse when you do stuff like that, but you don't know, so you don't care, and you'll just participate in child abuse from your ignorance because you're not spending enough time to. These legislators are not spending enough time to understand the issue, and they're just absorbing a myth, absorbing misinformation and responding to the misinformation from their fears and chaos. Now, what should be happening? So what the calculations as I'm looking at this 5-6 years ago, and I see this, we're going to hit this legislative phase. And, oh, wow, Cade's law is coming through. That's fine for me and fine for you, it should be, because you can now get me testifying to your state legislators, and we can correct the errors in Caden's law, the little DV monkey things that they put in that they're problem, and we can actually get good legislation to help you, to help all the families, to get the diagnostic assessment and get quality mental health services. But you're not getting me to testify to your legislatures. You parents, I'm not a constituent of your legislators. You are. And I've done that. I gave you the Pennsylvania legislature thing. So you've got that up on YouTube that you can go to your legislators and say, Dr. Childress says we need to have him testify on this or get input into this. Are you doing that? No. So you're just letting an opportunity go by. Why? Why are you doing that, you parent? Because you're so focused on your issues. You're focused on what about me? What about me? What about me? The opportunity just comes by for you to solve everything for all children everywhere. And you just let it pass by because you're not motivated to solve this for everybody. You just want your solve it for me, solve it for, and the moment you get it solved for me, you're off. You don't care what happens to everybody else. You don't care what. And so I'm sitting there watching that for 10 years. I'm watching that. I've sent out probes on people, on the parents, on the forensic psychologists, on the PAS people. So I know who's here. Of course I do. I've been here 10 years. I'm a clinical psychologist. So yeah, I know what your motivations are. I know what your lack of motivations are. I know what the situation is. Now, as I was progressing through this, I had to give you every opportunity to solve things, okay? To have the motivation. I had to give the parents every opportunity. I have to give the forensic psychologists every opportunity to correct themselves, to self-correct and get this in line. And the PAS people, the self-proclaimed experts, and that I gave them every opportunity to get on a proper path. And nobody is doing it because nobody wants the solution. And that's the necessary thing to expose. Because otherwise, I'm beating my head into a wall. No one wants the solution, and I'm trying to get a solution that nobody wants from a psychologist perspective, as your treatment provider, that's called carrying your motivation for you. Okay, the client comes in and says, I want to change, but no, they don't. They want things to be different, but they don't actually want to do the stuff necessary for change. They just want the world to be different. And so when you start helping them create that change, they say, no, no, no. They give you yes, but that doesn't work. I tried that. That doesn't work. And they keep putting barriers in front of you, trying to help them change because they're not motivated to change. And so you're carrying their motivation for them. So what you do as a therapist is you give them back their motivation. It's not me who's responsible to fixing stuff. It's not me who's suffering from the consequences of not fixing stuff. And so when you're sufficiently distressed that you're ready to change things, actually, well, then, yeah, you bring me the motivation, and absolutely I can work with your motivation to solve things because it's easy peasy to solve things once we have your motivation to solve things. But we don't have the motivation from the forensic psychologists. They're just financially exploiting you, and they'd have to leave if we change. So they're not motivated to change anything. The PAS, self-proclaimed experts, aren't motivated to change anything because the PAS is parental alienation is going to leave, and so they'll leave with it. So we got the two mental health division sections not motivated to change. We got the lawyers who are making loads of money off of you fighting in the family courts, so they're not motivated to change. And so, and the parents, you parents aren't motivated to change because you're in a traumatized brain needing to prove something to somebody and you're kind of locked into your own world. So there's no motivation to change out there except for me. Okay. And so I did what I did. Okay. I gave you all the opportunities because I'm documenting this stuff in. I figure this is going to go for another 50 years because first we're going to encounter the situation. Here's the calculation flow. I'll tell you where the calculations are going. We're going to encounter the situation. There's going to be all sorts of destruction, all sorts of bad things. And eventually, people will say, oh, Dr. Childers, we should follow Dr. Childers and start applying the DSM-5. Hey, baby, start applying actual knowledge, DSM-5, to get a diagnosis, factitious disorder, delusional disorder. Then we can start to treat it, and you'll start to do the contingent visitation schedule, and you'll start to do the diagnostic checklist and parenting practices rating scale. And oh my goodness, everything will clear up and will be solved. Then will come the reflection side for the AFCC, because you're going to have to clear out all the current top leadership in the AFCC. That's going to be a major tumult kind of stuff. And we're going to have to get rid of forensic custody evaluations entirely. They're a failed experiment. There's no quasi-judicial role for doctors. They made it up. They experimented on these parents, complete and total failure on their experiment. And that's where the self-reflection from psychology is going to have to happen. Once professional psychology, like the APA, realizes the level of destruction for children and families that occurred for 40 years from these forensic psychologists, how did they allow that to happen? How did the licensing boards allow this degradation of professional psychology to their populations, to their state consumers of mental health services? How did they allow this to go so low that patients are explaining the pathology to the doctors? Where are the licensing boards? How did that happen? Where's the APA? How did that happen? What happened with the AFCC embracing this failed experiment for 40 years and participating in the abuse of children and abuse of parents? How did that happen? That's the next phase, okay? Because before professional psychology can actually solve the family court pathology and problem, we need to understand how we are part of the problem. We became part of the shared delusion. We became part of the pathology. The doctors did, the psychologists did. We got captivated, you got captivated on your countertransference of being the protective other in a trauma reenactment role. And then the clinical people abandoned these parents to their abuse by the forensic psychologists. We said, go ahead, do whatever you want with them. Take their money, solve nothing, we don't care. So we abandoned them to the APA did, and so I got a documented petition to the APA, presentation to the AFCC 2017. And so, but there will come a time of self-reflection. That time will follow once you encounter me and say, oh, maybe we should solve it. Yeah. Okay. So the solution is, here's the immediate solution, is you start diagnosing the pathology. And then the longer term solution is going to have to involve some self-reflective insight from psychology so that we can actually come on in and solve this, which is remedy 3 of the petition to the APA, which is to hold some conferences on the attachment pathology in the family courts, but larger one on what happened here, what took place, and how do we prevent this from taking place? What is our path moving forward? And you can do a pilot program for the family courts. That's another route for you. Don't need to. If you want to, there it is. I can explain how to do a pilot program for the family courts. If you want that in your region. The moment you want to solve this, it's totally solvable. But right now, we're watching this move through cadence law, and that's going to devastate you parents. Oh my goodness. They're taking away all your experts. Okay, so you don't have an expert in the family courts, okay, after cadence law. So your experts have to have clinical experience with domestic violence and child abuse, particularly sex abuse. Good luck with that. Who does that match up to? Oh, the borderline moms experts about domestic violence and the impact of domestic violence on children and stuff. That's their experts. So they got their experts written into the law that the borderline mom can still get her experts in. But all you targeted parents, especially if you try to use parental alienation, your experts are going to be whacked from the courts. Okay. Now, the forensic custody evaluators is pretty much the only people you got. So you're going to be going into forensic custody evaluators. They're going to give you awful reports. You're going to bring those reports to me. I'm going to do a workup on them, and we're going to go after their license or, try to correct the situation. So I'm basically a surcharge on your forensic custody evaluator. Now, you can get solve that ahead of time by getting me on the clinical diagnostic assessment, through telehealth. That's another option, but you don't have any psychologist to do those things. So good luck with that. I don't know what you're going to do, what the calculations are, but this is not unanticipated. Okay. This is totally anticipated. We're in the destruction phase. Oh my goodness. There's destruction everywhere. In the family courts. And it's going to be bad. And it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until the client develops the motivation to solve things. And the moment the client wants to solve things, I'll tell them. First, return to the DSM-5, ICD-11, Diagnosis Guides Treatment. Get rid of forensic custody evaluations. There's no quasi-judicial role for doctors. Get back onto diagnosis. Then get a second opinion on all those diagnoses. Get a third opinion if you need it. So have the court appoint a psychologist to do the clinical diagnostic assessment, and then each party is allowed to appoint a second opinion consultant on that clinical diagnostic assessment. Boop, 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 easy peasy. In all cases of court-involved custody conflict involving severe attachment pathology, okay, involving a child rejecting a parent, we need to conduct a proper risk assessment for child abuse to the appropriate differential diagnosis for each parent. Okay, is it child abuse by the targeted parent some way? Diagnose it, treat it. Is it child psychological abuse, shared delusion, factitious disorder? If so, diagnosis, treat it. Okay, that's the solution. And then you can symptom documentation instruments, diagnostic checklist, parenting practices rating scale. Do that every time. Just diagnose the symptoms with that. Just document the symptoms, and you will accurately diagnose the pathology 100% of the time. Easy peasy. Check, 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 check. You're not doing it. Well, then you don't want a solution. Okay, the psychologists, if they're not going to document the symptoms, if they're not going to apply the DSM-5 to their diagnostic form, then they don't want a solution. They just want to take your money and do this experimental quasi-judicial role. And you parents are going along with that. Okay. And then flying monkeys get their Cadence Law version in, and you just say, okay, that's fine with me, because I'm just focused on me, 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 me. How do I solve me? Now, just so you realize that I kind of know what's happening, is years ago, I prepped you for this. Okay. I said there is no solution. You can look, stark reality, those sorts of, there is no solution for any one family until we solve it for all families everywhere, because the systems are broken. And so if you're a single family going into broken systems, they're going to just chew you up. But if we fix the systems, then any family going in will be solved. So as long as the systems are broken, there is no solution for you. Okay, so I know you're out there looking, what do I do? What do I do? Nothing. There is no solution to you. So you can just kind of settle in and relax to the destruction of your life. Okay, because that's the reality. Now, the moment we fix the systems, then there's a solution for all of you. But it requires getting you a diagnostic risk assessment for the child abuse using the DSM-5 and the application of real knowledge, not parental alienation, not resist, refuse, not parent-child contact problems, not these made-up euphemisms for pathology. There is no pathology unique to the family courts that doesn't exist in the society. This is a narcissistic borderline dark personality collapsing into delusional thought disorder. Okay, persecutory delusion. Can we think of an example in our society where we see a narcissistic borderline dark personality collapsing into persecutory delusions? It's not unique to the family courts. It just shows up in the family courts because of the rejection and abandonment of the divorce. So once we start to apply knowledge, it's easy peasy to solve. And it's been easy peasy to solve for 40 years. Okay, the forensic psychologists stopped diagnosing, they stopped being doctors. And the PAS, self-proclaimed experts, led everybody off into this made-up world of their pathology. And there's no doctors, there's no psychologists, there's no actual knowledge in the family courts. Okay. And so these two groups are just exploiting the parents in the family courts. And all the clinical psychologists went away because it's too dangerous to work over here. And so psychology has to solve that. You will not get a good psychologist over here until it's safe to come here. So that has to be solved. Until you solve that, there's no solution. Okay, so what's your solution to getting good psychologists to come over because it's safe? I have a solution. If you listen to me, we all do the same thing. We all move to the highest level. We all document the symptoms, checklist, and we can all do second opinions on it, and we'll be safe. So that there is a safety in my plan for the psychologist because I know what's going on and I've solved it for you. Okay, the moment you want the solution, I've solved it for you. Don't believe me? Diagnostic checklist for pathogenic parenting, parenting practices rating scale. Collect that information, everything will be solved. Try it. Try it. You don't try it. You don't do it. If you're not willing to lift your pinky finger to do a couple of little checklist things. Okay. Now, the interesting thing, this is another meta on this. Okay. That I understand exactly what's happening. Isn't it interesting that Gardner comes up with a PAS model, a totally made up thing, and he gets all these people saying it and supporting it and talking about it. For 40 years, people are fighting about PAS. Dr. Childress identifies it using the DSM-5. Not a single sound from any psychologist, from anybody. It's just, Everybody's still fighting about PAS. Nobody's applying the DSM-5. None of the psychologists are. None of them are applying the checklist or the none. Yeah, none. Because this is part of the pathology. Here's okay. I'm gonna put in my application for GOAT. Okay, greatest clinical psychologist of all time. Okay, one day, but you'll have to see this from the end. Once it's all solved, you can look back on this and say, "Dang, Dr. Childress was good." So, the um, the pathology has created the forensic psychologists and the PAS, Gardner PAS people. Okay, so they are symptoms of the pathology. And what you do with this factitious disorder, delusional disorder, is in its context, all these symptom features look normal, okay, given the context. But if you switch the context, then they can't adapt to the new and they pop right out. And so you can see them because they no longer fit the context. So that's how you diagnose it. You shift the context of meaning and it pops the delusional disorder right on out. You can look at it. So one of the ways to do that assessment is you move to a treatment approach. And so you tell the pathological parent, we're going to fix this, we're going to solve this, we're going to create such a wonderful parent in that other parent. The child's going to be saying, oh my God, I love going with the other parent. Won't that be wonderful? And I'm going, no, 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 I don't want that. No, no, no. Because you change the context on. Now, a normal range parent, you say, I'm going to make the other parents a wonderful parent. They say, please, yes. Oh my God, let's do this. Okay, not the pathological parent. The moment you switch it to treatment. And so that's the issue. We just have to shift the context for everything. And so that's what I'm doing. Okay, I'm shifting the context for everybody, everywhere, to show how everybody is participating in the pathology. You're all part of it. And that's the forensic psychologists are participants in the child abuse, which is, oh my goodness, bad. They're participants in the spousal abuse. Oh my goodness, bad for the psychologist to be a child abuser of their client, to be a spousal abuser of their client, to be participate. That is really, really bad. Okay, but that's what it is. So we have the psychologists participating in the child abuse by covering it up and ignorance and incompetence. We got the PAS people leading everybody astray and getting you to promote their theory. How do they do that? Get you to promote them as being expert. They're just exploiting you. They're not giving you the DSM diagnosis and helping you guide your families into getting real solutions. They're just promoting themselves as experts and getting you to promote themselves as experts to the court, which is now getting shut down by Cade's law. So you're running into a dead end with your guidance from that group. So then the forensic psychologists are just taking your money and doing nothing, and they don't want to change because that means they have to go away. That's the only thing they do is forensic custody evaluate. And they've failed for 40 years. It's a failed experiment. So all the top people, I won't name them yet, but you can name them. All the top people, just pick out their names. All of them need to leave the family courts, go work with ADHD or autism, go work somewhere else, eating disorders. I don't care if it's a problem. Okay, you need to be gone. And if you're not gone, I'm going to be reviewing your reports and we'll be looking at your license. Okay, for ignorance and competence violation of 2.04, violation 9.01, violation of the duty to protect. Well, so you can stay, you can go, you can change. That's up to you. But that's where we are right now. But I know, and this is where I'll kind of wrap up here. I know that there's no motivation to solve anything. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been here 10 years. I've known that since 2010. Okay, I did my little analysis, 28, 2010. I've known there's no, but I've had to give you every opportunity. So I did. Okay, so now you've had every opportunity. Now foundations. It's kind of Isaac Asimov. We're in a Selden crisis. It's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse until there's only one solution. Apply the DSM-5 and solve this. Diagnose and treat the pathology in the family courts. That's the solution. And you can do a lot of other stuff, but until we get to that solution, things are going to be destructive in the family courts. So now you're getting rid of the mental health services. You're going to get rid of PAS or any sort of treatment for parental alienation. Then you're going to get rid of the forensic custody evaluators because they're not awful and they're not solving anything, and they're using parental alienation and resist reviews dynamic in these made up pathologies. So you can have no mental health services in the family courts. Okay. We have one of the worst pathologies possible: narcissistic borderline, dark personality, activated, ripping a family apart because of the pathology, and no mental health services for the family courts. If that's your solution, good luck with that. When you're ready to get mental health services, quality mental health services back in the family court, come talk to me. Okay. Come read my website. Start doing checklist for pathogenic parenting and the parenting practices rating scale. Okay. Hey. If you actually do wind up diagnosing the pathology and it turns out to be a false, factitious attachment pathology imposed on the child by the allied parent, then for that particular diagnosis, you got to continue your visitation schedule. Okay, so you got solutions out there. You want a pilot program for the family courts? Come talk to me. I can help you set up a pilot program for the family court where you do this in a systemized way, collect the data on it. You're going to identify a university in your area. That's a good thing for the legislatures to do. So you should be talking to your state legislators about this cadence law, saying, you know what, if you're worried about things, let's get a pilot program with our university here, and we'll look at using the DSM-5 for a change. Let's go back to established knowledge and do a diagnostic workup of these families for the differential. Okay. Easy peasy when you're motivated to do it. So with that, I just wanted to kind of organize that up because I can. I got the YouTube. So now I'm headed off to my review of a forensic custody evaluation and doing some triage in the family courts. And this is my week of consults, general public consults, triage. And telling you the same thing. You need to get a diagnosis to guide the treatment because we need to fix the problem. So we're going to need to diagnose what the problem is. So it means you're going to have to get a license in your area to diagnose it, but they're not competent. So I recommend you get me on as a second opinion for that piece. Or if you got some mental health person that's done something and it's a problem, okay, I'll take a look at it and see if I can help organize and correct the situation and get you back on a proper path of getting a diagnosis and a treatment plan. However, you're still going to have to find the mental health person in your area that can do a diagnosis and treatment plan, and good luck with that. Okay, there is no solution for any one family until we solve it for all families. The moment we solve it, fix the system, then there's a solution for every family everywhere. Okay, so it's that situation. And I can tell you 1,000 times over what to do. I can tell you 1,000 times over what the problem is. But for a variety of very interesting reasons, no one's motivated to solve it over here. Okay, so, and that's what's getting popped out. Okay, because the context is changing. Boop, 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 and we're going to pop it out. How long is it going to take? I really feel sorry for all the parents over the past 10 years who've lost your kids, all the children who've had your lives destroyed over the last 10 years because no one's been motivated to stop it. And going now forward, even now, I'm really sorry that we can't solve, and that currently children and parents' lives are being destroyed because no one wants to solve that. It's going to have to get worse before it gets better, it looks like. Okay, because you're going to have to see more destruction in the family courts with no mental health services over here, and the forensic custody evaluators are getting brought up for licensing complaints, and everything's chaos and destruction and for everybody. Okay, you need to see that, then let's do that. Eventually you'll go, oh, maybe we should listen to Dr. Childress and apply the DSM-5. So with that, good luck, everybody. Happy November, and we'll just keep going on.